This is one of those drawings where the finished image looks complicated, but the actual process starts with something extremely simple. A few lines, a few shapes, and one really important question: can I make the pose work before I worry about the details? Um, Today I'm breaking down this Sung Jin-Woo sketch from Solo Leveling, and I'm doing the entire thing with the ballpoint pen. Uh, and because I'm working directly in pen, every mistake stays on the page. So let's break it down. So let's break down exactly how I approached it. Before putting the pen down, I look at the reference as a collection of shapes rather than a character. That's something I think is really important when you're learning to draw. If you look at Sung Jin-Woo and immediately think, "Oh, I need to draw his face, his hair, his jacket, his hands," um, all these folds, um, especially if you're looking at a reference that has that, you've already made the drawing harder than it needs to be. Instead, look for three things: the biggest shape, direction of the pose, and the areas that are going to attract the viewer's attention. For the drawing, the head is obviously important, but the cloak is actually one of the biggest shapes on the page. So I start with a gesture. I'm not trying to make this pretty, trying to understand the movement. Um, I want to know where the head sits and where the shoulders are pointing, um, or the angle of the body. Um, the angle perspectively as well, and obviously trying to keep everything in proportion all at the same time. Starting with the skeleton to give a guideline to work with for all of that. Um, and also how the spine travels through the body and how the lower half supports everything else. I didn't have the legs fully added to this photo, so it's like the upper thighs where it leads off. But and even though it's not really showing as much because the cloak is over it, how were those positioned realistically, so that everything's sitting on top of it, aka in obviously the skeleton helping root all these things into each other so that they make sense anatomy wise, right? Aka why I'd say in all the videos like skeleton first, helping root everything together. Um, so notice that none of this looks like Sung Jin Woo yet for the most part, but then that's completely fine. It's not exactly probably where I am in the video, but that's okay. So this is a skeleton. This is the skeleton of the drawing, which I actually did. So like I said, it's not exactly where I am in the video. Building out on top of the skeleton thus far right now, right? If this part doesn't work, adding beautiful hair clothing isn't going to save it unless you somehow place that so correctly that it it did save it. Without the guidance below it of the skeleton, showcasing that general idea of where things should go, so that you're placing them in a place that it can seem like it's all connected together properly, right? Or makes sense anatomically for the character he is and how he's usually drawn. I establish the basic head shape first, and I place the center line and the eye line. The face, the face is angled, so I don't want to draw the features as the head is facing straight forward. The small adjustment makes a huge difference. Then I start thinking about the hair. Sung Jin Woo's hair is one of the areas where it's really easy to overwork the drawing. You could literally sit here and draw hundreds of individual strands, but that's not how I want to approach it. Um, I think the hair has several large masses. Uh, I think of the hair as several large masses. Excuse me. The section moves this way. The section drops down. This section spikes outward, just describing, how certain sections can appear. Once those major directions are established, I can add smaller strands on top. That gives the hair a sense of structure instead of making it look like random lines. Um, Obviously, just drawing him multiple times, you get more used to seeing how his hair placement is and getting it more accurate over time. All these characters have their own signature general hair structure placement, right? With the clumps of hair and how many they might have on their head and how it look when their heads turn and where certain parts are pointing, right? Um, Now we get to the probably my favorite part of the drawing, the cloak. um, this is where I try really hard not to fall into the detail trap too soon. Obviously, clothing isn't just a collection of wrinkles; it's a three-dimensional object moving around a three-dimensional body. So before drawing folds, I established the overall silhouette. I asked myself, where's the fabric hanging? Where is it being pulled? And where is it bunching up? And where is it completely free? So then I choose a few major folds and let those carry the form. Now we're getting into one of the more difficult areas, arms and hands. This is where construction becomes really important. I don't start with the fingers, I start with the larger forms. There's the upper arm, there's a forearm, and there's a hand. Then I break the hand into a simplified block. Once that works, I can add fingers. And honestly, this area is messy, but that's part of working in pen. I'd rather have a drawing with a few visible construction mistakes that still has energy than a stiff drawing where I'm afraid to make a mark. Um, Next, I'm moving down into the lower half. I don't give every area equal attention. This is something that can really help your drawings. Detail is not the same thing as importance. Everything has the same amount of detail. Nothing stands out. So I keep some areas loose and I push the areas that help explain the pose. Um, if possible. And obviously, when I say push, not exaggerating them or bringing them out of proportion, right? Um, Making sure those areas are defined probably more as well, um, or they're placed in such a way that they do their job properly, right? Now the drawing starts to come together. This is where the line weight becomes very useful. I reinforce some contours and let other lines stay light. Areas where forms overlap can become darker. The face gets more attention. The hands gets more attention, and some of the interior clothing lines can stay much lighter. Obviously, um, the lines that actually define separation of areas or an outline of an area, um, or where there's more muscle definition or a bigger crease. That's those are the things that obviously deserve the darker lines because they are defining separations of areas, right? Or where they define the placement of where everything even is in the image. Um, and so I'll just say this one more time. It's something in some of the interior clothing lines can stay much lighter, and this creates hierarchy. Hierarchy, kind of just one word summarizing everything I kind of just said about what things need to be darkened and defined more, obviously, so that it can help showcase exactly where things are rather than just be a detail. Uh, your eye naturally starts moving towards the important parts of the drawing, or you're able to make sense out of what you're seeing sooner because I obviously didn't shade it. Now I start pushing the energy. This is where I allow myself to use more expressive lines. I don't want every line to have the same personalities. Some lines describe form, some lines describe movement, and some lines are there purely to create texture. And that's especially important with a character like Sung Jin-Woo. The character shouldn't feel completely static. Looking back at the finished sketch, there are definitely things I would change. That's actually one of the best parts of sketching. You can look at the drawing and immediately see what you need to improve. Maybe the anatomy could have been cleaner. Maybe I pushed this one section too far. But one important thing is that the pose reads, and that's always a priority. You got the main idea proper, or you got the main idea that you were trying to portray intentionally as proper as possible. That's good, right? You're trying to meet your own standard, right? That you had for yourself, if possible. Um, so yeah, so that's basically um, that's the breakdown I have for this. If there's one thing I want you to take from this breakdown, it's this: don't start by drawing the character, start by drawing the movement. Obviously, doing something like that would come from guidance of the skeleton before you even start drawing the actual character on top of it. The skeleton being the guideline to know where everything's going to be placed and the general idea of it, and that it's all rooted together while it's also moving the way you want it to. Then you find the gesture, you find the biggest shapes, you establish the silhouette, then you build the character on top, and don't be afraid of messy lines. Messy doesn't automatically mean bad. You're just building up to a certain level, right? Um, Sometimes messy is how you find the good line. Um, so this is my Sung Jin-Woo sketch. If you want to see more manga and anime characters broken down like this, subscribe to the channel and draw relentlessly. See you in the next one.